Welcome to another episode of Gassing. I'm here today with Lynn Greenberg of Pivot App. Have a look online. It's PIVT app, pivotapp.com. Lynn is the founder and the CEO, and she joins me all the way from New York, which is pretty awesome. It's also great to get another female founder on the show. Lynn, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. Can you just tell us very succinctly what is Pivot App and why did you start it?
Yeah, I may be in New York, but my heart is very much still in London, and that's where Pivot actually originated. So I graduated from university and a few weeks later moved to London to work for Bloomberg. And I landed there without knowing anyone, faced the issue that all people do when moving to a new and unfamiliar place, which is where do you start to make your new city feel like home? And despite the
Sure.
fact that I had a pretty hefty relocation package, the one thing that was missing for me turned out to be the number one concern of all relocated and mobile employees, which is that social well-being. And a big component that I really needed was figuring out how to make my new city feel like home. So, how do I get information, trusted information on my new city? Where do I live? Which bank do I join? What are the answers to the questions I don't know to ask? How do I meet people from scratch? And quickly found that it was much bigger than just myself. And after, an incredible, life-changing 3 years in London, one of my favorite cities, by the way, it occurred to me that when I went to do some research, found that actually companies spend $90,000 on average domestically, $300,000 internationally relocating a single employee. And a third of
Wow.
them will quit their job within a year or move back home because of their and their family's inability to socially acclimate. And it's just absolutely staggering. And so when I think about what London and the opportunity that I had, that was truly life changing, we wanted to create a platform where people could take those life changing opportunities in unfamiliar places and make the most of them. So, with that said, what Pivots does is we are a platform designed to reduce turnover and improve the social well being of relocated mobile remote employees and their families. So, we work with some of the largest companies globally to support their most valuable asset, which is their people and their families that are coming along with them. And actually, about 8 months ago, we also started working with cities. What we found was that what we were doing to support companies and their employees, there were cities that were looking to attract and retain top talent in order to boost their economy and grow their population. And specifically catered and tailored around remote workers. How do we get remote workers to come here, stay, acclimate, find community, and contribute back?
And so is Pivot, is it purely B2B? Is it B2C? Just explain to us a little bit about how it works.
So it is. So it's B2B2C. So we work with the companies and the cities, and they pay for it on behalf of their employees.
Okay, so I guess let's take it back a little bit because I'm just intrigued. So you came to London, you were working for Bloomberg, but now you've launched this incredible business. How did that happen? Was this kind of something that, I mean, had you always wanted to start a business, or did you go and you were like, no, I want to join that corporate ladder. That's the thing for me. But then you had this great idea. What was the journey?
No, and in fact, so I majored in government in college and minored in sociology. I took one business class. That's about it. And didn't know what I wanted to do after college. I had I'm from New York, so Mike Bloomberg was the mayor, and he actually spoke at my university the year before I graduated. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to work for someone that I respected. And, I really resonated with the fact that a lot of the revenue of Bloomberg LP went back to, philanthropic endeavors. And so I saw a listing for Bloomberg Law, and I kind of said, okay, government law kind of makes sense. It was the only position I applied to outside of the US and went through a bunch of interviews and Ultimately didn't work for Bloomberg Law, but worked for a corresponding counterpart at Bloomberg. And I had only been to London for 2 days when I was 12 years old. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And so with that all said, I had no tech experience either, only what I was doing at Bloomberg. And I had no intention of starting a company, but I'm a pretty outgoing person. And so when I went to, and pretty curious. And so when I went to London and was struggling to, meet people from scratch and really find my way, I started asking people at Bloomberg London, which is the international hub, how are you doing this? And I couldn't get a straight answer, and people weren't really able to, tell me that they were doing it in the best possible way. And so I just started interviewing people, more from the purpose of how do I make the most of my opportunity? And when I found that it was much bigger than just myself, I just kept diving further and further in and said, okay, I think I can do something here. I think we have the pieces to the puzzle. It doesn't have to be this difficult.
Wow. Okay. So you were at Bloomberg. Presumably, were you there for 3 years? And did you start the business while you were still working there? Like, how did you start? How did you fund it initially?
So I was at Bloomberg for 3 years and kind of did this on the side again, very just interviewing people, and speaking to others. My brother was working with me on it at the time, and then after about 3 years, moved back to New York, where we started building out our beta. And so wasn't at the point where we could take it full time. I actually joined a venture capital firm in New York, to learn the other side of things. And so we had, the beta that was being built. I was trying to learn that venture capital side of things, and then ultimately, actually, we launched Pivot as a consumer app for people moving and traveling to help acclimate in their new city. And we were live in New York and London for 6 to 8 months, I think. And we were approached by HSBC, and they said, we came across your platform. We like what you're building. This is something we're struggling with our relocated employees and business travelers. Is this something you'd be interested in building for businesses? And what we ended up finding was, because we are a consumer app, and we found the need for a lot of different demographics. So we had backpackers on our platform. We had study abroad students. We had business travelers. We had expats, of course. And what ended up happening was we built a good platform for a lot of people. We didn't build a great product for one. And so this was a really great serendipitous opportunity to focus and find the need for one specific demographic, and all the while get paid for it by the companies, as opposed to hoping that we'd attract enough users for ad revenue.
Yeah. Okay. So it's almost like you. So did you kind of white label it for HSBC, or it remained Pivot, but HSBC kind of were like, we're going to use this, and um, how do you even go about monetizing that, or working out what to charge, or like how was that process for you? It's pretty extraordinary to get a business like HSBC kind of reaching out of the blue. If you told me, I don't know, you knew a friend and the friend or whatever, but just to come at you cold like that, you probably didn't think it was real.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And it was truly, I say this is my first startup, but I feel like it's my second, because it's truly a different business, going from consumer to B2B, but also learning the relocation industry, which there are so many nuances, so many different pieces to the puzzle, and stakeholders that are a part of the process, that it was a really steep, and it continues to be a steep learning curve. And so, in terms of pricing, like that's something we're still kind of iterating and figuring out, in terms of our users and the motivations for both why people are moving and then why the companies are paying for it. That's constantly changing, right? The people's motivations for moving change all the time. And so, that's something that has taken a lot of time and a lot of staying close to our customers and users to really figure out what that is, what pricing is going to stick, right? How it's going to work. So, for instance, unlike a traditional SaaS platform where you charge the company an annual subscription and they pay for it up front, typically. The way relocation works is it's 80% of the large corporations will outsource all their relocation needs to relocation management companies, really handling the logistics. And so we needed to get contracts with those relocation management companies. And the way that they work, they handle the billing, is that they charge for the number of authorizations or the users that come in every month. And so it's, the model is shifting, right? And the way that we had to really kind of think about how we're going to predict our revenue and subsidize the business accordingly. It's challenging. It's a really nuanced type of industry.
Causing you to pivot quite a lot.
Quite a lot. Quite a lot.
I guess what's lovely about it is that this business is born out of you kind of almost built the product for yourself, or at least the product that you wish you had when you arrived. So all those pain points, all those things people are talking about, you personally understand them. You've been through them. I mean, is it self-funded? How did you get it off the ground? You went to work in VC, so have you done a raise? It's quite an interesting kind of thing that you did, the kind of companies that you went to, because I'm guessing you were learning kind of quite craftily, learning quite a bit of information that you were going to potentially need later on.
Yeah. So after being in VC, didn't want to raise venture money. It comes with, right, more people kind of breathing down your neck and expectations. And what I quickly realized was that it's a marriage, which can be really beneficial, but it could also be very detrimental. And we launched our business beta in Dallas, Texas. And what we quickly found was that companies said, okay, it's great that we can provide this benefit to our employees in Dallas, Texas, but we need it to be everywhere. And so in order to scale at that capacity, we had to raise, because we needed to hire, we needed to really supplement the resources accordingly. And so when we were a consumer app, we just did a small friends and family round. When we were approached by HSBC and then decided to go to a business platform, I actually went back to work and started consulting for startups to foot the bill, to refactor our application, and also to buy some time while I learned the new industry. And so started, while I was working, getting letters of intent, and really started trying to build some traction in this industry before then raising. So it wasn't until we launched our beta in Dallas, Texas, that we raised some funding. And so this was
a second raise, was it? So you did a kind of like a seed round, family and friends, and then you did a kind of, I don't know, what do you call it, Series A, or like a first round of?
Not even. So like we did a small friends and family round, very small, and then this was our seed. And so we bootstrapped as long as we could, but we've raised from the most incredible investors, truly. And so, having that venture background was really helpful in knowing what to look for.
I did have quite a look around your site, and you seem to have some pretty impressive clients, like Amazon, for example.
Yeah, it's been a real privilege to be able to, support the large organizations and learn from it and grow.
How do you even get a contract with a business like Amazon or one of these large banks? Is that something that you did, or did you have like a experienced salesperson like this?
Yeah.
You're kind of talking like this is all very natural to you, but this is your first business, and so you must have kind of started, I don't mean from nothing, but you must have started not knowing what you were doing and
Absolutely.
figuring it out as you went, which is how we do it,
Sure.
right? But I'm kind of blown away a little bit by some of these clients. So yeah, just explain a bit more about how that came about. Not necessarily specifically Amazon, but just some of these
Yeah.
big accounts.
So we do, yeah. So we have a great, sales lead. And then I have actually been doing a lot of that as well. So it's been a combination and a team effort. Everyone kind of pitches in with these, major sales. But yeah, it's taken, so this industry, a lot of people have worked in it their entire careers. It's everyone kind of knows each other. It's hard to break into, and so it took a lot of time to really build our brand and credibility in the space. And we spoke on as many podcasts as we could, and industry events, and wrote in the magazines, and cold message people just to kind of learn from their experience and what their programs looked like, and ultimately, got these contracts with some of these relocation management companies, which were very, very helpful. Um, they could serve as our advocates, and then once we got a contract, once we got one of the large organizations to say we want to start using you, what's great about the fact that we already had these contracts with these relocation management companies is the companies could just say, can you add this to our bill? And we don't have to go through due diligence with each individual company, which is great. And so, slowly but surely just proved our value. I think COVID really helped us in a large
Okay.
regards, because employee well-being, social isolation became something that everyone acknowledged, and something that we were really able to prove was a missing aspect of this industry.
But that's interesting as well, because for a large period of time, people weren't moving anywhere.
Hmm.
So you could have almost argued that it would have had a negative effect on your business. But I guess it was kind of a brewing up for when everything came back open again, and suddenly there must have been quite a large demand for the service that you're offering. Do you have competitors in the marketplace? And were they there before or have launched since you began?
Not direct competitors. So I don't like to say there are no competitors, because there's certainly workarounds, right? So there's companies that are focused on social connection, like Facebook groups, right? Meetups, things of that nature. There's companies that are focused on the logistics of relocation, moving you and your things from A to B. And then there's no shortage of blogs, right? Articles that you can sort out, that really kind of offer some of that information. But no one is really bringing that together and focused on this demographic. And so, really where our value add is that the industry, has really been focused on that logistics, moving you and your things from A to B. But the human side of things has really been left out for a long time. And so what ends up happening is you get a hefty relocation package, and then, after a couple weeks, if not maybe a couple of months, you're left on your own. And, that aspect of acclimating and finding community and checking in on people and how they're doing and connecting them to people and resources that can help them, that's really been left out of the mix. And so, we're a 12-month plus subscription that is basically in the palm of your hands throughout your post, way past the time and spend of traditional relocation packages, and really
Yeah,
focused, yeah, on the employee
and
and the family.
the stats that you mentioned at the start of the call, I can't remember, what is it, $300,000 cost of move or 90?
90,000 domestically, $300,000 on average internationally.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a pretty big decision then, presumably, for these companies to have somebody go abroad. So are they sending them there because they want them to have that international experience, or because the job is actually can't be done by anybody else? What tends to be uh, the reason? And I guess subscribing to your platform when presumably for not so much money, when there's that much money at risk if it goes wrong, is a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think so, absolutely. And so the reason why they will relocate town is for a variety of different reasons, of course. Sometimes they don't have the skill set in the place that they, right, need that talent. Sometimes for management, they want you to be engulfed in their different locations and cultures to really understand the business as a whole. Um, and sometimes it's for career jump and opportunities, right? People, it's a sense of promotion where they can really jump into the industry in new ways. And so it's interesting to see how that ebbs and flows, especially with remote work now and flexible work, how that's changing. But yeah, it certainly seems like a no-brainer. I think what's been a challenge for us is that things have been done the same way for years. And so there's typical relocation packages, which include X, Y, and Z. And that social well-being component has never been a part of it, right? And so we're bringing something new into the mix. And although it's very much needed, right, and the numbers are there and people, the employees are asking for it, it's never been there. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is that relocation management companies that have handled the move, um, they are not necessarily accountable, held, it's not necessarily within their job description to make sure that people stay and that they're, acclimating, they're happy, they're there, they move their things from A to B. And so it's right, like who does this fall upon for the employees to succeed and make sure they're happy? And are we tracking? So in the past specifically, very few companies were tracking how their employees were doing on that human level, which really affects how they show up in the workplace, right? And how they, and whether or not it's successful or not. And so I think a big challenge too was, who does this affect? Who's getting a promotion or who's getting laid off because the employee is not successful or they're not happy or they're quitting? And it was very hard to find the person, the team, the person that was accountable for that, because it was a gap.
Yeah, so it's just getting lost,
Hmm.
and these employees presumably weren't really being asked the questions. So then there was no forum in which for them to give an answer. So then, yeah, it seems kind of crazy to put someone out there and then kind of not know what's going on. And I imagine dealing with these kinds of companies, because I run this business, CO2U, we have a gas refill program for home soda makers, but we run it quite often for big corporate companies. And the one thing, the little experience I've had in that kind of sector is that it's very hard to make the smallest changes. When you're running a startup, you realize something doesn't work. So you just go, look, this isn't working. We need to, we thought it was going to be best if it was color red, so we'll just make it color blue. Oh, now
Hmm.
that works. But if you're dealing with HSBC, Amazon, any of these big companies, I would imagine, like I say, even to get them to even to get the kind of smallest change across or get them to do something in a different way, very, very difficult. So I imagine you've had some quite big challenges with trying to facilitate change in these organizations.
Absolutely. And even just getting right the point across, that this is something that's needed. And really a huge part of what we do too is just creating the narrative and giving the companies the resources and the stats and the data that they need to then bring this to decision makers, right, to get it approved. And then there's the component of how do we then get the users to come on and use it, right, and see their value. And so it's multifaceted in the sales process, so to speak.
Yeah, because I guess you've got several stages, right? You've got to get, like you say, you've got to get into the business, and then presumably they say to their employees, "Hey, so look, there's this app called Pivot. Please use this." And I guess there'll be some people that maybe move to, I don't know, Bangkok, and they already have family and loads of friends there, and they just go, I'm cool. I've got this all under control. but incredibly useful for those that don't. So do you have kind of these stats that you build within your app that you can feed back to your customers? Is that kind of one of the big USPs?
That's a huge aspect of what we do. So we provide monthly success metrics back to these companies. And that includes things like how people are utilizing the platform, but also trends, right? When we do these wellness check-ins, we've mapped out the relocation journey to a T based on where we know those pivotal moments are. We'll do wellness check-ins and say, Lynn, we know you're right past that honeymoon stage. How are you doing? And based on how you respond, we'll connect you to people or resources that can help you. But we'll also take that high level program information and give that back to companies to drive business decisions, saying people are really struggling at this point. Here are the top 5 things that they're looking for. And so it's been really interesting to see, and we're seeing we developed and released a product 2.0 last fall, and we're actually seeing that the average user is using our platform about 6 hours a month plus. So we're seeing a lot
I think
of
that's quite high.
tremendous data that can really inform business decisions, right, and really help the companies in this dark hole that has been there for a long time.
And have you got any stories of anybody in particular maybe that has used the app and has been able to feed back to you and say, hey, this was really great because, I don't know, I met this person, or if it wasn't for this app, then I wouldn't have found this restaurant, whatever.
We do, and that's really what keeps you going, right? It's about the impact and the support. Even people that haven't had those milestones where they've met a person that has changed, right, their experience, or even the curated content that we feed them that's personalized to them and where they are in their journey, they feel supported and they feel like they have people in the palm of their hands that they can turn to, and that makes a really big difference too.
That's great. So who runs that kind of aspect of it? Is it automated? Do you have a customer services team? Like presumably they can communicate in the app, or is it the client HSBC that's communicating with their employees?
No, so everyone's on the same platform. So all of our the employees of all of our companies are on the same platform. And so when we think about the value that we provide to the users, it comes down to a few main things. So as I mentioned, we're focused on the human side. And so one of the first things that we'll have the user do is fill out a living assessment, which gets them starting to think about their goals, interests, expectations, passions. And we then take that to level set their expectations and connect them to people and resources that can help them achieve those goals. The second aspect is really about building and cultivating a community, which we do both on and off the app. So we'll proactively, as I mentioned, recommend that you connect with certain people based on the fact that they're relocating with the same company, just achieved a goal you want to achieve from your hometown, moving with 2 kids under the age of 5 also. And you can direct message those people, form group chats. We have a community messaging platform where you can connect based on interests, goals, passions, create events. But we know that if we're doing our job right, that we're also getting you out there in the real world and building community out there. And so we'll set up nudges and we may say, Lynn, you told us you like soccer. Have you checked out these pickup leagues? This is a really great way to build community. Or the coffee shop that you frequent, you should go in there and introduce yourself and tell them your order, because that next time you go in and they remember you, you're going to feel that sense of belonging. The third aspect, of course, is about that strong and healthy mindset and the wellness check-ins. The fourth aspect is around we have a resource center where we have city guides, we have checklists, how to move your, things to think about when moving your pet. How do you move with someone with accessibility needs? And then the last aspect to it is that curated content that we were talking about. So we've mapped out the relocation journey to a T, and based on where we know you are, we will goals, interests, family structure. We'll feed you emails, and also give you content on the app that may say, if we know you're relocating with 2 kids under the age of 5 and you just found out about the move, we may send you an article saying, here's the best way to break the news to your kids. So it's very kind of curated based on who you are and what your situation is.
I can imagine very big highlights for you would have been things like being contacted by HSBC to work with them. But can you tell me off the top of your hand, what was the darkest moment in the process or the hardest challenge? Was there any point where you felt like you might give up? I mean, it feels like a real success story, this business, but I know that's not very rarely completely the case.
Wow, lots of so many, right? So many it's a constant roller coaster. I think the point where my brother lost interest, and I was a solo founder, and we were in the midst of being a consumer app to a business to business platform, and there was a lot of unknown. I think that was a very dark period for me where I didn't know what this new business was going to look like. A lot of people said, well, how is this going to work? You don't have funding. You don't necessarily, how is this going to scale with large businesses? There were certain aspects. So we went through contract negotiations with a relocation management company for, I think it was like 18 months. We got to the point, it was one of the largest ones. We got to the point where our lawyers said, let's sign this thing. Their lawyers said, let's sign this thing. And the next day, our point of contact said, we got a new head of digital. We put it on her desk.
Oh.
And she said she didn't know what this was. She's scrapping it. And flew over to Toronto to try to meet this person, and seemed pretty agreeable and amendable in person, and then just scrapped the whole thing. So there were definitely highs and lows, you name it, but overall learning a lot and very much enjoying the journey.
Tell us, where is the business at today, and what's your hopes and dreams for it? Is this a business that you're building to grow to sell for a big exit? Is it a business that's generating big profits and you're going to just do it forever? Do you have a business plan that takes you that far ahead?
Yes. So the hopes and goals, as we mentioned before, this is personal to me, right? I experienced this firsthand. Our team has experienced this firsthand. We really feel like we're solving a problem that helps people and makes an impact on people's lives. And so, we want to grow this to the best of our ability, and really create an impact. And whether that means selling it to a larger organization that has the resources to take it to the next level that we couldn't, right? Obviously, we have investors, so it's no longer just our team's decision. But I think there's a lot of different ways that we can really continue to expand our reach. And that is the ultimate goal, is to give people a resource so that they can make any city really feel like home.
And are you completely global, or is there kind of, the particular cities where you're kind of focused on the most?
We're in all the US and Canada right now. We'll be in the UK shortly and expanding pretty quickly from there.
I imagine that's quite a fun one for you then, because that's your story, right?
Yep, absolutely. That will be a really big one.
You're looking forward to get your teeth stuck into London. And I would have thought as well, it's probably quite a big relocation piece for workers from the States. I imagine it's probably one of the top locations they get moved to. I have no idea. You probably have better stats than me.
And equally as interesting, it's the biggest failure rate is people moving from New York to London, followed by Londoners moving to New York.
See, I find that very, very strange, because I would have thought, and I've spent a fair bit of time in New York, lived there for nearly a year sort of thing. It's about a similar kind of a city in so many ways, just in the way it's kind of, you take the tube or,
language,
metro, whatever you call it. Yeah, just the kind of the hustle of it, the speed of it. But I guess as well, potentially very foreign, different temperatures. Obviously, New York gets extremely cold. It also gets extremely hot. So there are these things. But I would have thought it's quite. I would have thought it would be a relatively easy move one way or the other, because you'd just be kind of used to it. So it's really interesting that you're telling me it's the total opposite. And I wonder do you think that is just, well, why do you think that is?
Mm-hmm.
And do you think this app will be able to help solve that problem?
Yeah, so I think my hypothesis is that New York and London are two cities that people think, to your point, are very similar. And I used to say that when I was in London. New York's more similar to London than New York is to Texas. And you have the same language, and they're two cities that you see a lot on TV and movies. And so you have this expectation that it's going to be very similar. And in reality, when you go over there, there's some nuances that you're not expecting. And I think the reason is probably because of those misaligned expectations. So, for instance, if you're going from New York to Tokyo, you're expecting for almost everything to be completely the opposite and upside down, right? From the language to the culture.
Yeah.
You're not expecting that when you move from New York to London or London to New York. And so when those things pop up, you're taken aback. And there's so much more challenging because of that. And I think that's the
And
reason why.
they're both tough cities, right? In their own way. Like everyone says, London's very cold. I think London is very cold. For me, I know a huge amount of people, and I've been there 25 odd years or whatever, so it doesn't feel so cold to me. But if you travel, 1 hour or more north in the UK, people say good morning to you in the street and things like someone says good morning to you in London, you're like, excuse me. And I've always found New York a bit friendlier, actually,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it is still quite a hard city, right? So just
Mm-hmm.
to kind of turn up and try and embed yourself
Right.
into that, yeah, quite tough.
Yep. And there's some little things too, like and that's why I mentioned before, one of the values that we try to provide is what are the answers to the questions you don't know to ask? Because for instance, I went to London and I got a letter in the mail saying, we're going to show up on your door if you don't pay for a TV license. I said, what's a TV
Oh,
license? Right? Like we don't have that here. Is this a joke? So it's those
yeah.
little things that are nuances that take you aback, that you're not expecting.
Yeah, and you would have just liked to have someone who could have just, if you told me, I would have just said ignore it, or laughed. But it's quite threatening. I mean, like they make it look very, like you're going to come and put handcuffs on you and
Yeah.
take you to prison if you don't give them the £150. Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't kind of considered that.
Or
But it's
tipping
amazing that
culture,
you've had
right?
this
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, tipping culture, exactly. Uh, which, yeah, I mean, it's kind of changed a bit in London recently, but yeah, totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, wow, okay. Um, uh, can I ask you as well? It's kind of general loaded question, but I spoke to my first female founder just last week. She was talking a little bit about being female and some of the challenges that she'd faced as a result of that. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
suggesting that you have or
Mm-hmm.
haven't faced any challenges, but I'm interested to learn, have you? And have you had any experiences, either positive or negative, that you want to share with us and maybe could help
Mm-hmm.
other women that are out there that want to start a business?
Yeah. So I saw it a little bit while I was on the venture capital side of things. I've seen it tremendously more now being on the entrepreneur and founder side of things. I've certainly been in pitch discussions where I was compared to a guy who had very similar credentials, and he said that there's no way I could have been able to achieve that at my age and X, Y, and Z. And there have been several times where it's been, you wouldn't even, right? Like you can't even imagine. Um, and it's difficult, right? Like the stats speak for themselves, right? Like less than 3% of
Yeah, I mean,
venture money goes to women founders, right? And there were times where my brother was still a part of the mix where I thought, am I doing something detrimental to our business where he's not the CEO, right? Are we not able to, should he be the CEO? Even though I went through the experience personally, right? I had that venture capital background. I was older, I had some more experience, but that had crossed my mind before. What I try to do to the best of my ability, though, is look at it from the flip side of things and say, what can I do to make this an advantage, right? There's certainly opportunities on how you view things. There are venture funds that are catered towards just female founders. You kind of go after that and really find those champions. But certainly it's there. The sigma is there, and we need to get more women, in venture cap and leading venture capital roles to start, having those people invest in women. And I think it's really important for female founders to, have mentors and have other female founders that they can rely on, because it is a very different landscape than male founders experience. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't begin to even fathom it, because some of these challenges and things that you're talking about, I don't get. I think, from my understanding, it's sometimes the way you're being spoken to. Is that correct?
Sometimes,
And
yes. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes women being called bossy, or I don't know, a bitch or something,
Right.
when actually all they're being is firm. Whereas the guy comes in and does it and he's killer. Everyone's like, yeah, he's cold, he's a killer. And it's
Yep.
that whole kind of thing. But is that really true? Just 3% of venture money's gone to female founders.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recent thing,
Yeah.
recent
Yeah.
stat.
Yeah. And
I mean,
and I will say,
wow.
from being on the venture side of things, the one thing I will say is, when I saw, it was very interesting when you saw guys come in and pitch. It would very much be, we're building the next Tesla, the next Apple. Are you in or out? Right. And then you have the women, a lot of the times, that are a little bit more wired to be, here's where our revenue was, here's where we're going to be, a little bit more tactical and
Bit more honest.
honest. Yep. And so, I think there is room for women to really just own a lot of, where they're going, um, and, you know, shoot for the stars a little bit more. I think it's easier said than done, but I think there's, yeah, I've seen a lot where guys have come in and they believed it, absolutely, but they really boast that this is going to be a missed opportunity if you don't jump on the rocket ship. And so it's interesting to kind of see the nuances there.
But I guess a woman could come in and she could sell the same pitch, right? I think it's just
100%.
something in the maybe it's a guy girl thing. I don't know. I mean, my partner, she's in HR analytics, data analytics, and she's always talking about how when for a big corporate pension fund, she's always talking about when they put a job spec out there, men who are not qualified for that position will like you said, will shoot for the stars.
Mm-hmm.
But women generally will only apply
Yep.
if they believe they meet the exact criteria. So it's funny that,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess maybe that changes, or is that just, I don't know, is that just part of the nature of who we are?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, but I think, yeah, that's why mentors are great. That's why I feel like, because we need to start getting those narratives in place that you should be applying for those roles that you might not be on paper necessarily qualified for, because you can live up to that. You can learn, you can, take on that challenge once you're given it. And so I think, yeah, just having more people, women in leadership positions, I think having mentors, think having people be a little bit more vocal about what needs to be done and how we can support each other, I think is going to be really paramount.
Brilliant. Lynn, thank you so much for talking to me. It's been very insightful. Just before you go, though, because I know you're going to be very busy, but thank you for your time. When are you expecting to launch this thing in London?
I hope Q2.
Oh, wow. Okay. So soon.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
Well, look, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Thanks for sharing your story. It's really, really interesting. You come across as you make it all sound very, very easy and very, very natural. But I'm sure, like you said, it's been a long, very challenging journey. And congratulations on getting it this far. And I'm really intrigued to see just how far this thing goes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.